All right, joining us now is Brad Porter, the CEO and founder of Cobot, Collaborative Robotics officially, but you're calling it Cobot as well.
Yep.
That's sort of the nickname.
That's right.
Awesome. Well, here to discuss tariffs and the impact on robotics and the ability for robots to kind of supplement some of the onshoring and manufacturing. So we're very grateful to have you here to help explain this. What have you seen in your business in the past, 2 weeks, almost 3 weeks since all of this tariff news started hitting? What have you heard from clients and how has it changed your day-to-day? Tell us kind of what's been going on the ground here.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was at a supply chain conference in Miami when the kind of first, with supply chain leaders from around the country in automotive and other spaces. And so there was, a lot of just trying to figure it out, right? Just trying to figure out what's it going to mean, how do we respond, how do we, we have a globally integrated supply chain, everyone does, and so what's this going to mean, how do we, and so for us as well, I think the tariff conversation is not new, and so we've had time to talk to suppliers and kind of prepare, and so I think the short-term shocks are not that great because we've had conversations with suppliers. I think longer term, just trying to understand where what the situation is going to be, so that we can make smart decisions about our own supply chain for robots and help our customers as well.
It's interesting, like that. It is sort of two-sided, where you've got the effect on potentially on your own business, where it might make manufacturing robots more expensive, but also an opportunity where maybe there's more demand here in the U.S. because factories, need to ramp up in a way that they otherwise wouldn't. So kind of two sides of that coin.
Yeah, exactly. I think we, in any of these kind of transformations, there's headwinds and tailwinds, and I think, yes, as we think about reshoring more manufacturing, that is going to come with a lot of automation, and I think a lot of need for more capable robotics like we provide. But yeah, about 30% of the components in our robots are sourced from China right now. So it's not 90%, but we have to be cognizant of how those supply chains are shifting and make sure that we can continue to build our robots at a great price for everyone.
How difficult is it for a factory to implement robotics and just say, okay, we've got to ramp up manufacturing here? What is sort of the typical timeline?
Yeah, to build a new significant plant is typically kind of 2.5 years on the fastest to maybe 5 years. When a business decides it wants to build a new operation and plant, it really wants to start generating revenue from that plant as soon as possible. And so, there's a lot of, if you're going to outlay a lot of capital, there's a lot of desire to build that up as quickly as possible and get it running and operating. But there's a lot of equipment, a lot of technology that has to work together, a lot of process design work, and in many ways the integrators and the construction, there have been a lot of projects going on, and so those companies are often busy as well, and so there has been, how do we bring enough capacity? So there's a capacity bottleneck to, can we manufacture manufacture the factories, right? Can we build the infrastructure we need quickly, and are those companies that do that really well even staffed up to support all that?
And does any of that have to do with some of the AI demand? I would think with all of these data centers popping up too, is that adding to some of that bottleneck?
Yeah, exactly. No, there's a lot of construction projects in energy and data centers, and so it's exciting. There's a huge amount of infrastructure investment and capital investment, but yes, that also means that those groups that do all that work are quite busy as well.
I would think real estate too. If you're looking for a place to build a factory, you got to compete with an AI data center maybe.
That's right, and those data centers, they're different different needs and demands. Obviously, the data centers often need to be very, near very low-cost power, where factories are often where can you get the skilled labor force that you need, and so they're not always competing for exactly the same real estate, but sometimes those end up being in the same place, and then yeah, they are competing for real estate and projects.
What's the justification for using robotics? I would think labor force, maybe cost. What are some of the discussions that you're having for clients who say, okay, I want to beef up our robotics presence? What's the reasoning behind it? Yeah,
it's a combination of all of that. I think the labor force is constrained in the U.S. We're at something over 4% unemployment. There's not a lot of staffing up these facilities. Whether we work with hospitals, we work with manufacturing, we work with logistics, all of them are struggling to staff to their needs right now. So part of this is just how are we going to even operate the facilities and have the staffing that we need. Part of this is, hey, the best practices in lean manufacturing that have kind of evolved over the last 20 to 40 years. You really want predictability, and technology is a way to bring predictability to those process paths. And now, as we bring software and AI into the operations as well, if the more of the operation that is under control of technology, of mechatronics, of robotics, we can then apply software and AI to further optimize that. And so there's a lot of tailwinds beyond just say, is this robotic capability lower cost than a human worker? It's really, can this technology allow us to produce higher quality, more predictably, at a higher throughput, and then can we apply software and AI to keep making that better?
You mentioned the tailwinds. What would be some of the headwinds? Why might a company not be able to do this quickly?
Well, I think it is a transformation of your existing process paths. There is a lot of manufacturing that goes on in the U.S., and those facilities have been built up over the last, 15 to 60 years. And so those facilities weren't necessarily designed around robotic automation. And so now you're bringing significant amount of technology change, you're bringing a significant amount of workforce practice change, operational changes. You're maybe taking an operation that was highly manual, and then asking the leaders of those facilities to embrace technology, which may not be how they were used to operating a facility. So you have to help customers through that transformation and through that journey, and it's not always just bringing these days we just bring in a printer and it prints paper for us, but bringing a robot is quite a bit more complicated and brings in a lot of change.
I would think the other part of it too would be the capital investment, the cost up front. Is there hesitation now with some of the economic uncertainty brought on by tariffs where companies might not be willing to foot the bill without the certainty that these are going to stick?
Yeah, I think that is, I think Marco Rubio made the comment that, companies just need to understand the new rules of the system, and then they'll be able to make those investments. And I think that's exactly right. I think as enterprises understand the tariffs and how that's going to affect, then they can make smart decisions around capital allocation and deployment. I think many of our biggest enterprises are in a strong capital position. I think the country has been in an investment posture. But on the other hand, the interest rates have been high for borrowing, so cost of capital, if you're borrowing, can be quite high. And I think, yeah, if you're trying to make an investment that where a factory, is going to start up in 2.5 to 5 years, you want to understand some amount of stability and economic stability. So I think instability, lack of clarity in what will cause people to, they'll make the obvious decisions, right? It's fairly clear that everyone should be trying to think about how they can reshore, and in some ways the instability motivates some urgency there. But when it comes to deploying really, really big dollars and making a really big shift, stability is going to be really important.
How big is the price tag for doing this? I'm sure it varies on the project, but do you have sort of a dollar estimate of what it would cost for a traditional manufacturer to implement robotics?
Well, so there are two thoughts there. Where I thought you might be going was how much are kind of new factories, and those are often $1 billion plus investments. So they're significant if you're going to build a brand new facility. When it comes to bringing robotics into existing facilities, now as companies like ours employ robotics as a service, right, where you maybe don't have to put very much capital expenditure into it. It might be, tens of thousands of dollars to hundreds of thousands of dollars to a few $1 million in a facility to bring in, advanced robotics capability. Depends again on what you're trying to do. But I would say, yeah, those price tag, and if you're doing something capital intensive, putting in a big storage retrieval, those can be, $10 million plus style investments. Even like a cross belt sorter, big conveyor belt can be, 5 to 15 million. And so they're big expenditures, and you want to realize the return on that. Often companies are looking to realize the return on that in less than 2 years. And so, but the other side is as steel prices go up and things like that, some of that fixed infrastructure becomes more expensive. As the integrators are very, very busy, they charge more. And so the cost of some of these more traditional automation projects have gotten much more expensive. And that's where we think, flexible robotics, robots that can come in and take on work alongside humans without needing to bring in a lot of steel, bolt a lot to the ground, without needing to put, a multi-million-dollar capital investment in. That's where we see the industry growth happening in the cobot space.
And not necessarily humanoids. So you guys are distinct from what you sort of picture, and some of I think people hear robotics and they sometimes think like a human version of a robot. Talk us through the distinction and how Cobot is different.
Yeah, I mean, humanoids are really exciting from a pure kind of sci-fi technology standpoint, but I previously led robotics for Amazon. I led our expansion in accelerating robots, and I think Amazon's somewhere between 750,000 and 1 million robots now. We looked a lot at all the technologies that might be applicable in Amazon's facilities, and looked a lot at the potential for humanoids, because the humanoids aren't new, right? Agility is one that we worked in, a company that I think is quite good in the humanoid space. We looked at where that technology might be most applicable, and found a lot of process paths. But then as we started to really think about what the operating environment needed for Amazon, and then if you think about hospitals or manufacturing, all of these places are using carts, right? Hand carts. So this human scale material movement, people are moving boxes, totes, and carts around. Nobody's climbing stairs. And so bipedalism is very complicated technology from a safety standpoint. What we do as humans, the fact that we don't fall down all the time, is incredibly impressive, right? But it's very hard to make a robot that doesn't, and you're now seeing more and more, now that there are a few more humanoids out there, you're seeing more and more videos of humanoids falling over, right? It's because bipedalism is really hard, and if you have any kind of glitch in the electrical system or the sensing system or the actuation, then it's unstable and it falls down. Mm-hmm. And so we looked a lot at, what actually was needed to solve a lot of these process paths, and what you really wanted was a robot that could move these kind of humans could move the carts, could move totes, could move boxes, could pick things up, could put them on shelves, take them off of shelves. But it didn't need to look like a human. In fact, it would be better if it were 4 wheels on the ground, very precise motion. It would be better if it if it sensed the world from a fixed position, from high up. It'd be better if it would be able to lift and place things and it would be better if the batteries were swappable, so it never sat on a charger. And so what led us in the inspiration in creating Cobot was we didn't see a robot out there like that. There wasn't a robot that could just come in and move your existing carts, pick up your totes. And we didn't see a robot that was going to we had kind of 2 classes of robots. The robots that Amazon's deployed hundreds of thousands of are kind of very simple, low to the ground, pick things up. They don't get much better as AI gets better. They aren't going to become more capable, right? Humanoids have the potential of becoming more capable as AI becomes more capable, but a humanoid robot doesn't work very well until we get really, really advanced physical AI. And so the question was, for Cobot, how do we build a robot? We've built our robot called Proxy that can do meaningful work today, but get better as the AI gets better. And so that makes it a good, solid investment for logistics or manufacturing or a hospital to think about bringing that technology in. It's very safe, it's very collaborative, it's very friendly, and it's only going to become more capable as AI becomes more capable, but it can start doing real work right now.
Who are some of your biggest customers? You mentioned hospitals as well. Where are you seeing the most demand come from? And who is willing to put up that CapEx right now?
Yeah, so we have a half dozen customers. We have 2 live deployments right now. We're deployed with Maersk, the global shipping company. We're moving carts in some of their transload facilities, and the robots are working 16 hours a day, moving hundreds, sometimes thousands of carts in that facility. And then we have a deployment with Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota, where we're helping move carts in one of their specimen processing labs. And so that's an exciting early pilot. But our customers are manufacturers, are logistics, they're hospitals, and they're folks who, they have a lot of human scale material movement going on. And I think the comment we get from our customers is that Proxy is a robotic building block that they can see working in all of their facilities. So a lot of times you think about a robot, it's a very specialized, does one job very, very well, like my printer example, right? But what these customers are seeing is if they can make an investment in getting technology to work in one place, and then it can start to do more and more work. You think in hospitals, there are linen carts, there are food, you're bringing OR equipment from the OR to sterilization and back. All of these basically involve somebody walking a long distance to connect 2 parts of the hospital, because the hospital is rightfully organized around the patient flow. And all the material flow is in support, but that means you sometimes have your sterilization facility a long ways from your OR. And so, yeah, those are the type of customers we're working with, but really, yeah, we're working with a wide diversity of customers.
You mentioned the subscription model too, robots as a service. That's probably a new term for a lot of people, but does that help bring the cost down if you can pay a subscription versus maybe make a bigger upfront investment? And is that where you see the industry going?
Yeah, I think that kind of flexibility really helps, particularly as people are adopting new technology, right? As they're trying out something, it makes the economics work much easier to calculate versus saying, hey, we need to put this expenditure down and then amortize it over the next 2 to 5 years. And so yes, we found that robots as a service is a much simpler way for customers to buy robotics and to get them going quickly.
And then the economics for you, we talked about sort of the 2 sides of the coin. Do you need to raise prices at some point if your robots get more expensive to build? How are you thinking about the impact on your own business?
Yeah, I think for us, we're in a technology cycle where there's still a lot of opportunity for us to continue to optimize the cost of the robot. And so in some ways, if an individual component is becoming more expensive, that's a headwind to our overall bill of materials cost. But I think we still have a lot of opportunity to bring down the cost. And so we'll see a lot of folks doing that. If a component becomes more expensive, they'll apply engineering to try to find another solution or a cheaper solution, and so we're going to apply engineering to keep bringing the cost of our robot down as well. But it certainly is a headwind, and there are certain technologies that only certain companies are very good at, and so that's a harder switch to do.
So with all that in mind, do you think about this tariff uncertainty or maybe onshoring, reshoring as an opportunity, or how are you viewing it?
Yeah, we think that really there's the imperative to bring more capability back and to reshore a lot of this capability is an opportunity for us. And it's an opportunity in part created by the fact that we're already at historically low unemployment rates, right? And so this isn't going to come back by shifting labor, really. It's going to come back with high degrees of automation. And I do think, AI is going to create a labor shift as well. And so, we will see, we already see, college students being very, very interested in robotics, realizing that that's kind of a future wave. And so there's a lot of great talent coming up to help as we try to accelerate in robotics. And so there will be a labor force transformation from AI, but maybe less on the manufacturing side, but we'll, as we bring more back, it'll be more and more robotically automated.
And this won't be, from what I'm hearing, a labor boom or a job boom if manufacturing's coming back here. Because of the reality of the labor force right now, it doesn't seem like it's going to create a whole lot of jobs. It might just go to automation.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see. Obviously, I do think the wave of construction, if we're building data centers, energy plants, factories, that is going to employ a lot of people. And so, but then longer term, I think steady state, data centers are massive facilities, but don't employ that many people continuously, right? And so, because there's a lot of automation or not a lot of, it's racks and racks of computers, really. But in factories, so we will be hiring people. We will be hiring robotic technicians and specialists. We'll be investing in companies like ours should be continuing to grow in significant ways. So I think it will create jobs, but the 1950s style manufacturing jobs that I don't think it will look like that.
So maybe helping automate, if there's a factory job, it's sort of the way Amazon, I think, or maybe Agility described it, as sort of working alongside robots or being almost like the manager of a bunch of robots. Is that what the future looks like?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at Amazon's operations, they obviously employ a large number of people in the fulfillment center, but there's a lot of staff to manage those facilities. There's a lot of staff and distributed around the world for Amazon in Europe and Boston and Seattle, who are both inventing the next technology but optimizing the technology. So you're employing a lot of roboticists, you're employing a lot of software engineers, you're employing a lot of technicians, and so those are high-skilled jobs. They're high-paying jobs as well. And so yeah, I think there's anytime you're making a big investment and making a big transformation, there's a lot of people who get employed and a lot of high-skill work. But I think, as I said, what we think of as the traditional, you look now at a auto manufacturing plant, there's a lot of robots, so there's a lot of controls engineers writing software, there are a lot of technicians helping with that, but there aren't as many people just doing assembly work. And so our traditional, Ford Model T assembly line where someone's putting something in, that's not really how manufacturing looks today, and those aren't those jobs are being done with automation now, but there are a lot of people running and operating those plants and making sure that the technology keeps working.
It's fascinating. Well, a lot to discuss. Brad, thank you for shedding light on all of us.